everybody had a good Fourth. As Rabbi said, we're all here with all of our appendages. My kids' sound machines really, really did their jobs last night. I don't know if anybody else did, but they took one for the team, and it was a great thing. So most Shabbats, as Rabbi Sharf mentioned, I ask you to leave your schmutz at the door, to take the stress of the week and leave it out there for the 25 hours that we have of Shabbat. And the truth is, that directive is as much for you as it is for me as well, because all of us need that reminder. We all need the reminder that Shabbat is a place of peace for us and an opportunity and a gift that we have. And over the last weeks and months, though, I've found myself under even more stress, a little bit less easily able to leave my schmutz at the door, feeling anxious and worried, dealing with the trauma both of daily life that seems to be more challenging, because we have those normal stressors, the daily concerns about our children and our families and our communities. We have the stress of the world we live in, though, too. We have the stress of an ongoing war, a catastrophic loss of life, hostages yet to be returned home. We have escalating court cases here in our state and in the community nationwide, laws and policies that deprive us of our religious liberty and personal autonomy. We live in a time of increasing and escalating anti-Semitism. In January, the ADL released a report that said in the 3 months since October 7th, we saw a 360% increase in anti-Semitic incidences. All of this is true. But it's also true that we live in a time and a place where the 24-hour news cycle can easily convince us that that is the only truth, that the dire reality of the endless worst-case scenarios is the only thing that's out there, that there is no goodness and no light and no hope. I think we've all gone down that rabbit hole before. And yet, this week I've seen something different. This week I saw people coming together in our communities as friends and neighbors in celebration. I saw people in my neighborhood who oftentimes have political endorsement lawn sign battles, barbecuing together and enjoying fireworks on their front porches as neighbors and friends. I saw people marching in their towns and in their areas that they live in. I saw diversity in religion and ethnicity and socioeconomic status. I saw people coming together to celebrate freedom and democracy. And in that celebration, there was a kernel of something greater. There was the hope of a brighter future. And we as a Jewish community have a part in that, a piece of that history, because we too came to America in a search of that same hope of a future free of tyranny and persecution. And so tonight, instead of focusing on the worst case scenario, all of the traumas and the dire realities that we live in, I want to invite us for just a few moments to leave our schmutz at the door and turn to a piece of our history that I'd like for us to read and study together. So for those of you who are here, you should have gotten a handout on the way in. And for those of you online, Dory, our Sue Maven, is putting the source sheet up into the chat, and you can click on the link. So here I have for you two pieces of our history. One of the oldest documents that we have, which is first a letter from the Hebrew congregation of Newport, Rhode Island, which is a message and a letter that they sent to George Washington, August 17th, 1790. And then on the following page, if you flip it over, you'll see a reply from George Washington to the Hebrew congregation of Newport. That's a really important piece of our history, the fact that George Washington personally responded to this community. So they're not very long, I'd like to read them together because I think that they have some really interesting and important kernels of wisdom. Has anybody here, just a show of hands, read these before? Okay, so Sam and Joseph, Lisa has. They're interesting. Let's look at them. So in the message that was written by, I'm not entirely sure how to pronounce his last name, but it's Moses Mendel, I think it's Sykes. Do you happen to know Sykes, maybe? Sure. We agree. Two rabbis make an opinion, right? So he is the kind of, I would imagine that it says warden. I'm going to imagine that it's something like our president. So imagine that Justin signed this letter. So, sir, to George Washington. Permit the children of the stock of Abraham to approach you with the most cordial affection and esteem for your person and merits, and to join with our fellow citizens in welcoming you to Newport. With pleasure we reflect on those days of difficulty and danger, when the God of Israel, who delivered David from the peril of the sword, shielded your head in the day of battle. And we rejoice to think that that same Spirit who rested in the bosom of the greatly beloved Daniel, enabling him to preside over the provinces of the Babylonian Empire, rests and ever will rest upon you, enabling you to discharge the arduous duties of chief magistrate in these states. So they're setting up this bringing in of Jewish texts into this letter, right? So this is a Jewish community in Rhode Island. They're writing to the President of the United States. They're writing to George Washington, the great George Washington. They talk about, and they bring in David, they bring in Daniel into their letter to set up this kind of perspective where they're saying, we hope all of these blessings come upon you. Deprived as we have hitherto been of the invaluable rights of free citizens, we now, with a deep sense of gratitude to the Almighty Disposer of all events, behold a government erected by the majesty of the people, a government to which bigotry gives no sanction, to persecution no assistance, but generously affording to all liberty of conscience and immunities of citizenship, deeming every one of whatever nation, tongue, or language equal parts of the great governmental machine. This so ample and extensive federal union, whose basis is philanthropy, mutual confidence, and the public virtue, we cannot but acknowledge to the great work of great God, who rules in the armies of heaven among the inhabitants of the earth, doing whatsoever seems him good. For all of the blessings of civil and religious liberty, which we enjoy under an equal and benign administration, we desire to send up our thanks to the Ancient of Days, the great preserver of men, beseeching him that the angel who conducted our forefathers through the wilderness into the promised land may graciously conduct you through all of the dangers and difficulties of this mortal life. And when, like Joshua, full of days and full of honor, you are gathered to your fathers, may you be admitted into the heavenly paradise to partake of the water of life and the tree of immortality. So we have this beautiful letter asking for God's blessing, drawing on so many of our ancient texts, bringing in David and Joshua and Daniel. And not only did they send this letter, right? Imagine sending that letter right now. It's a beautiful letter, but it's not necessarily how we would normally write a letter to, if we were writing to the president. But not only that, we have this reminder that we had not been given the rights of citizens in other lands, right? This is America. We've come to this place to escape persecution and tyranny. And now we have a government that is committed to religious liberty. In fact, the article above this, on the first page, it is the part of the Constitution that guarantees freedom of religion. And they're acknowledging that and thanking George Washington for having such a government. And then George Washington replies to them. And in it, I'm not going to read the entire thing, but in it he expresses gratitude for his warm welcome to Rhode Island. But then it talks about, if you look at the kind of second column in there, the citizens of the United States of America have a right to applaud themselves for having given to mankind examples of an enlarged and liberal policy, a policy worthy of imitation. All possess alike liberty of conscience and immunities of citizenship. It is now no more that toleration is spoken of, as it was by the indulgence of one class of people that enjoyed the exercise of their inherent natural rights. For happily the government of the United States, which gives no bigotry, no sanction to persecution, no assistance, requires only that they who live under its protection should demean themselves as good citizens in giving it all of the occasions their effectual support. It would be inconsistent with the frankness of my character not to avow that I am pleased with your favorable opinion of my administration and fervent wishes for my felicity. May the children of the stock of Abraham who dwell in this land continue to merit and enjoy the goodwill of the other inhabitants, while everyone shall sit in safety under his own vine and fig tree, and there shall be none to make him afraid. George Washington also drew in the vine and fig tree, the notion that we are part of a democracy that establishes the foundation at its core religious liberty for all, not merely toleration, as he says in this letter. He says it's not about tolerance anymore. Tolerance is something that is gifted and bestowed by a class that already has rights. That is not the foundation of the United States, he says. Instead, we're not working towards tolerance. We already have laws that establish that we should all be able to live freely. And so in studying these things, and I could talk about these for longer, but I won't, so that we can all get home tonight. But we see that the Jewish community too has a part of this American dream, a part of this American experience, and that we are still part of that great experiment, and that we have to work every day to be part of the complexity that is the United States of America. I think sometimes we're tempted to say that it's too challenging, it's too broken, it's too complicated. And if you do look at it through a single lens where you're going down the rabbit hole of social media and everything is terrible and the endless news cycles make it draining and traumatic, then that can be all that we see. But we also have to remember that, like we may have seen this week, I know I did, that there are good people with beautiful dreams that mirror the kind of world that we want and that we should work for. The great American experiment is not yet over, and we cannot let it fail because we throw up our hands and say that it's not worth fighting for. Because, friends, it is worth fighting for. It's worth fighting to continue to shape the kind of society that we want to live in, the kind of country that we want to raise our families in, the kind of place that allows us to have liberty and justice and freedom for all. There's a Hasidic teaching that reminds us of this truth, the need to see multiple perspectives. Martin Buber teaches that Rabbi Simcha Bonin teaches that every person should have two pockets. And in one pocket, there should be a piece of paper saying, "I am only dust and ashes." And when we're feeling too proud or too high and mighty, we should reach into this pocket and take out that piece of paper. But in the other pocket, there should be a piece of paper that says, "For my sake, the world was created." Because when we're feeling disheartened and low, we should reach into that pocket and take that paper out and read it. We can't forget the pain and trauma and the dissonance and the brokenness of our world, but neither can we forget the other side of it too. The failures and the brokenness motivate us to do our part to fix it. But if we only see the brokenness, then we forget that this can be a great place of dreams and hope that's worth fighting for. Just like that teaching, we have to have both in our pockets. We have to hold both in our hands. We have to find the balance that both can be true and do our part to find a way to fix that brokenness. Shabbat shalom, everyone. Invite everyone who is comfortable and able to do so to rise as we turn to the Aleinu.